So today we're going to dive into a pretty controversial topic, a specific psychological profile that seems to pop up again and again among people who build massive fortunes and influence. We're going to park the politics to one side and just look at the raw psychology behind it.
And this brings us to a really fascinating question, a paradox, really. Think about it. We often tell kids off for having no filter, right? But then you look at some of the most successful people on the planet, and it seems like that's the very trait that helped them get there. So, what is going on? Well, the answer might lie in something called the dominance script. Here's the game plan for how we're going to break this down. First, we'll decode what this dominant script actually is. Then, we'll get into its key ingredients, from ditching the need to fit in and seeing the world as one big competition, to building what's called a money self. And then, we get to the secret sauce, a technique the source calls verbal fabrication. Finally, we'll wrap it all up with the big takeaway. Okay, so first things first, what on earth is this dominant script? You can think of it like a psychological blueprint, almost like a set of internal operating rules that lets a certain kind of high achiever see and interact with the world in a way that's totally different from most people. It's really built on 4 psychological pillars that stack on top of each other, creating this incredibly powerful framework. It all starts with how you see society, then it moves to how you see other people, then how you see yourself, and finally, it's all about how you talk to yourself. So let's start with that very first one, the foundation.
The whole script really kicks off with rejecting something that's baked into most of us, that deep, psychological need to just fit in. It's about stepping outside of the usual social contract.
Psychologists have a name for this. It's called normative influence, and for most of us, it's a huge deal. We internalize all these voices from our parents, teachers, society. They're called introjects, and they all tell us to play nice, fit in, and get that approval. The dominant script starts by basically throwing that whole rulebook out the window.
The source materials uses this brilliant phrase to describe what this looks like in practice. No lock on the door of his mouth. What society might see as just a lack of a filter, this mindset sees as a powerful tool. A way to cut through all the hesitation that stops most people from making big, bold moves. And here you can see the difference, clear as day. The standard conformity script runs on external validation. What do other people think? But the dominant script? That's built on a completely internal locus of control. The core belief is simple. You create your reality. Not society, not your boss, not luck, you.
So, what happens once you've unplugged from that need for everyone's approval? Well, according to this script, the world stops looking like a friendly community and starts to look a lot more like a competitive arena. This is the second pillar.
Now, the clinical term for this is social dominance orientation, or SDO. It's basically a worldview that says, hey, the world is a tough place, resources are limited, and every single interaction is a chance to either get ahead or fall behind. It's a constant game of winning or losing ground.
What's really interesting is that this competitive view also acts as a kind of shield against a really common problem, that psychic flight from success. That weird feeling of guilt or anxiety that makes us self-sabotage right when things are going well. Instead of that, obstacles are just seen as challenges to be tackled with what the source calls an unruly, mischievous energy.
And that brings us to the third piece of the puzzle, how you build your identity. Instead of your identity being based on what other people think of you, it gets fused with what you can actually create and achieve in the world.
The source gives this a name, the money self. Now, this isn't about being obsessed with cash. It's about an identity that's built entirely around being a producer. Your value isn't tied to being popular or well-liked. It's tied to your output, your results, your ability to make things happen, period. And this mindset often goes hand in hand with a management style called Theory X. This is the assumption that by default, most people don't have a lot of ambition and they need strong, direct leadership to get things done. The result is the ability to make tough, emotionally detached decisions that are purely focused on the bottom line.
And, come on, is there a more perfect pop culture example of Theory X in action than this famous catchphrase? It's really the ultimate expression of that self as producer mindset, where job performance is the only thing that matters.
All right, and this brings us to what the source material calls the absolute core secret. This is the engine that makes this entire psychological script run. It all comes down to one thing: mastering the conversation you have inside your own head.
It's called verbal fabrication. Now let's be super clear. This is not about lying to other people.
This is all about how you talk to yourself. It's the conscious act of framing and evaluating things inside your own mind. It is the very foundation of directed thought.
And this is where you see just how unbelievably powerful this technique is. So, let's say you have a setback. The average internal script might immediately say, I'm a failure. That's a final judgment, a dead end. But the dominant script, it reframes it. It says, the execution was unskillful. You see the difference? It's not a verdict on who you are, it's an evaluation of what you did. And that immediately opens the door to finding a new, better strategy.
I absolutely love this analogy from the source. The idea is to approach your own mistakes like a master craftsperson looking at a piece of wood. You're just objectively looking for flaws in the technique, not in your own fundamental worth. It strips out all the emotional drama and focuses you purely on how to get better.
So, let's pull all these threads together. What's the final lesson here? What's the ultimate point of this whole psychological breakdown? It's a really powerful idea. Your internal world literally creates your external world.
The ultimate result of really mastering the script is a psychological trait that researchers call hardiness. And this isn't just about being tough or surviving stress. It's the ability to actually learn from your stressors and use them as fuel to take direct, decisive action.
And this is the final, most important point. It's all about ownership. The core message is that by seizing control of your internal script, the way you talk to yourself, the way you see the world, the way you define who you are, you fundamentally change how the external world has to respond to you.
So we'll leave you with a question to chew on. If you had total control, if you were the sole author of your internal monologue, and you could rewrite it from scratch, what would your new script say?